This video is very late, but I have a good reason for it. For the last week and a half, I've been extremely sick to the point where I couldn't really even talk without coughing, so I haven't been able to get the Critical Role videos out as quickly as I would have liked. But I am back now, and in this episode we're going to cover episodes 22 and 23. Now I'm not going to go over the episodes in as much detail because we have a lot to cover, but we're going to try to hit the major points of each episode. Firstly, we have to talk about Gina Hexam. Now, after returning to Drusar, the party goes to Hexam and gets paid for their efforts, and Ashton is released from his debt. And while I think that this is objectively good, I'm also concerned because there's no mistaking it. Gina Hexam is a villain in Campaign 3. She seems to exclusively be working for her own benefit, and that's a problem for the party. Based on everything that we know about Hexam, she is a master of realpolitik. If Gina Hexam sees an advantage in undermining Bell's Hells, she would absolutely take it. And if we want to think back many sessions ago to the ball episode of Campaign 3, Gina Hexam was dancing with Armand Treshi. And this is after Ashton told Gina Hexam that the Treshis might be a little dangerous. Or if not told, very much hinted at it. So we have this powerful woman who is willing to do anything to gain more power and influence. And now she does not have a tie to Ashton. She doesn't have a tie to the party. And without this tie, I'm concerned that she's now not going to be seeing Ashton as an ally, and they are going to start being seen as just any other pawn. Particularly due to their effectiveness, work with the Greenseekers, and now maybe eventual arresting of Armand Treshi, perhaps Ashton, Bell's Hells will start to be seen as enemies of Gina Hexam. And if that's the case, oh boy, we have to strap in because she does seem like a very formidable villain. She could very much start to begin to fill a Trent Ickathon role in this campaign, a villain within the establishment whose sheer bureaucratic power and force can just level the party underneath her feet. But speaking of power and bureaucracy, let's talk about Armand Treshi, because Bell's Hells returns to Lord Esteros when they return to Drusar, and he gives them a mission, essentially. Armand Treshi is running away due to the recent events surrounding Emoth Cade. The Mahan houses have withdrawn their support from Armand, and now there is essentially an arrest warrant out for Armand. Using the tracker that they placed on him at the ball, they learn that he's close to Bossaris. And then Bell's Hells essentially decides to finish the job, to go to Bossaris, find Armand Treshi, and hopefully bring him to justice. And this feels like an important mission for Bell's Hells. The arresting of a very influential figure from a Mahan house could catapult Bell's Hells into another stratosphere of popularity within Drusar and within the general region of Marquette. Although Treshi is certainly a dangerous foe, and more run-ins with him and potentially Ira the Nightmare King could be definitely extremely dangerous. But this does feel like the newest arc, the trip to Bossaris, trying to apprehend Armand and then maybe even taking him back. And I think the timing of his flight is not a coincidence, as remember, Rudis is reaching its zenith, so soon the forces of the Nightmare King are probably going to be gathering and conducting some sort of ritual. It seems to make sense that Armand might be towards the heart of this operation, and now I'm simply wondering what we're going to find in Bossaris. Next, we can quickly jump over to Marwa and the new portable hole that the party got. Firstly, I think it needs to be acknowledged that Matt's done it again. He's introduced yet another fantastic, memorable shopkeeper that we'll probably be going back to for a long time. But really, I think the highlight of this trip to Marwa was the gathering of the portable hole. Now, portable holes have been around for a long time in Dungeons & Dragons, and I think that they are one of the best items to give a party. They're right up there with immovable rods, bags of holding, etc. And I'm really happy to see Matt giving out all of these really sandbox sort of items. And it's also fun to see a group of players who fully takes advantage of these items as well. And some of the best moments from these past few episodes have been when the group is toying around with the portable hole, trying to see what exactly it can do. Part of the juice for me as a dungeon master and as a player is taking these crazy magical items and using them in unpredictable ways in order to solve problems. Situations like this are some of my favorite moments in Critical Role. I loved it in this campaign when Laudna used the immovable rod to trap the verdict behind the door. And so with this in mind, I'm on the edge of my seat waiting to see what will happen with this portable hole. But really, now we need to get to the highlight of what I think is episode 22, which is more insight into Ashton's origin story. Because for the longest time, Ashton and the Nobodies have been this black hole of information really in Campaign 3. We generally know what happened the night that Ashton fell from Hexam's manor, but now in this episode we're finally getting some answers as to why Ashton is so weird. Ashton and the others do some digging on his past after being released from Gina Hexam, and after going to the Crook House, they realize that no one really knows what the mission was breaking into the manor, which is definitely suspicious, as I would expect a group of criminals would go into such a manor with a plan. And now it's discussed that it was mainly just a smash and grab, but why were they up on that floor? Why were they looking through the boxes that they were looking through? There's so much that we do not know. So to get answers, Ashton turns to Fresh Cut Grass and Imogen, who both cast Detect Thoughts and go into his mind. And as they're deciphering the thoughts, they begin to see flashes of that night, as Ashton can't remember everything perfectly, but we do see those flashes of him going into the manor. We see flashes of him pulling a glass vial of a strange dark liquid from a crate, and then red runes exploding out all over the floor, and Ashton falling. And we get a few very important pieces of information. Firstly, the Nobodies are alive, I believe. At least a few of them, because a voice says that Ashton is dead and to leave him. And then we cut to the next vision, which is Milo asking if Ashton is okay. So if the Nobodies are still out there, then that means that Ashton and the group will eventually have to find them to realize what really happened that night. Additionally, we learn how Milo began to fix Ashton, and that, at least for a time, it appeared that Ashton would die. But instead of giving up, Milo took the glass vial that Ashton had in his hand and poured it into the concoction that they were using to put Ashton back together. Now, it seems fairly obvious that this potion, this vial, contained dunamantic energy. It was a potion of dunamancy. So if Ashton was put back together partially with dunamancy, that would explain his powers, his subclass, and much, much more. So Ashton has dunamancy running through his literal veins. Now the question is, what does that mean? What new powers will be unlocked in the future because Ashton is partially made of dunamancy? Who knows, but one of the questions I had is, I wonder if we would consider Ashton consecuted. To our knowledge, he's not in the presence of a Luxon, but it would almost make sense why he came back. If the dunamancy allowed him to be reborn, in a sense, would he be consecuted? I think it's a fiddly little question with the mechanics, but now just knowing that the process that put Ashton back together was dunamantic, I think we can really start opening up these sorts of questions. Moving away from Ashton, though, we can now start discussing Chetney, the Gorgine, and his recent actions. In episode 22, the Bell's Hells visit Ajit Dayal. Located in the Dayal Halls, it's essentially a center of learning and education for the children of Drusar. But the reason why the party is there is Chetney, as he's wanting to learn more about Gurge's past, the Gorgine, the group of lycanthropes and other shape changers that live in the Heartmoor, or at least in the outskirts of the Heartmoor wilds. And while we do get more information on the Gorgine, I'm not really interested in talking about that specifically, as I am talking about Chetney's late night antics at the beginning of Critical Role Campaign 3 Episode 23. Because Chetney goes on his own little stealth rampage. He scares the shit out of a local shop owner and basically intimidates her into making sure that she charges only fair prices and then leaves before being seen by a large group of citizens before turning invisible. And I think this really changes how I see Chetney. Because in D&D canon and lore, werewolves are naturally chaotic evil. And at first, I didn't really think that Chetney was chaotic evil. I thought he was definitely a little chaotic, but good-spirited. Now I'm not so sure. Maybe Chetney was more good-spirited once, but I think that he's starting to fall to this corruption of the beast. And based upon how Ajit Dayal was talking, I think that this is definitely going to be a narrative plot thread going forward. Chetney seems to be losing himself a little bit to the lycanthropy. He's taking on these more wolf-like features and traits, this aggressiveness, this, I hate to say it, but lone wolf attitude. He also has an extreme hesitancy to give up the curse, as Dayal said that he could lift the curse of lycanthropy, but Chetney does not want to. I think this is just another sign that the curse is really starting to take hold. Or perhaps Chetney just really likes the power. Whatever the case, I am now expecting Chetney in the future to be more aggressive and to go on more of these types of missions. Missions that are not solely good. And now I'm wondering in the future if he'll get the attention of the Gorgine or other orders of blood hunters that will try to stamp out his antics. Because the blood hunters of Matt's world are trying to contain the darkness, and if Chetney is going on these missions and he's hurting people, I would expect that he would get some unwanted attention. I'm just kind of expecting the near future for some type of incident to happen with Chetney. I don't know exactly what, but I am definitely expecting it. But I'm at least glad that Travis chose to go on this mission when he did, because the very next day the party is leaving Drusar via airship. So at least he's not around to deal with the aftermath. And I don't really have too much to say about the airship. I liked the crew of the ship. They were nice. I thought they were good, decent characters, but they didn't really impact me a ton. I did really like the sequence, though, of Matt's description of the airship taking off. I thought that was really cool, and I generally enjoyed the fight. And the fight I'm talking about is that these weird flying manta ray creatures with spikes down the back attacked the party as they were traveling. They did quite a bit of damage and seemed to pose a decent threat. It was a fun combat with lots of twists and turns, so I can't complain. The party is definitely growing more powerful, and I'm interested to see how their powers will grow in the future. This allowed them to kind of stretch their new abilities a bit. So yeah, I had a lot of fun with the airship sequence. I thought the battle was really good, but I am right now just really looking forward to them eventually landing in Bosphorus. But before the landing in Bosphorus, we need to talk about perhaps one of the best sequences so far in Critical Role Campaign 3. Laudna comes to Imogen just to check in, see how Imogen's doing, and reminisce. And during this moment, Imogen brings up how she still has possession of the piece of Gnarled Rock. And at this point, both of them are up on the deck of the ship, and they begin talking about Gnarled Rock. And the way that Laura Bailey describes how Imogen feels safe around this rock really just sent chills down my spine. Because we, the audience, and of course all the players, know that this thing is evil and it is corrupting Imogen. At least so we think. And Laudna is there supporting Imogen, trying to help her through these feelings, because it's definitely clear that Imogen knows that this rock is probably bad, but still loves the comfort that it provides. And eventually she just kind of flat out asks Laudna, do you think I should keep having this rock? Do you think that it's bad, that it's evil? Now this entire time, Laudna has been getting these little pings from the Gnarled Rock, almost saying that it is bad. And we later learn that these pings are coming from Delilah. So Laudna eventually asks to hold the Gnarled Rock, promising to Imogen that she will give it back to her. And at this point we can really see that Imogen is tied to this Gnarled Rock. It is this point of comfort for her, and it's important to Imogen now. Yet when Laudna grabs this Gnarled Rock, this heat begins to surge through her entire body, and she will not let go of this Gnarled Rock. And as Laudna begins to question what's going on, we slowly begin to learn that Delilah is taking control of Laudna's body. And Delilah tells Laudna that this is not a stone that she should have, and don't worry, she'll take care of it. And Laudna, under the puppeteering of Delilah, crushes and destroys the Gnarled Rock. This definitely hurts the trust that Imogen has in Laudna, as again, she is being corrupted by this rock. She's tied to it, and she loved the comfort that it gave. And so you can definitely see how this hurts Imogen. And whether this worked out good or bad for Imogen, the consequences still are the same. There's now definitely a bump in Laudna and Imogen's friendship and their connection. And eventually Laudna just runs away and asks Delilah just why would you do such a thing? And Delilah just says that, it's for her own good, and leaves the front of Laudna's consciousness. And oh my god, wow, I did not see that coming. I don't think anyone in the Critical Role community saw that coming. Yes, we knew that Delilah was Laudna's patron, but I think Delilah is so much more than a patron. I mean, we got it confirmed Delilah is more than a patron. She's riding along inside of Laudna's psyche. And it's terrifying to think that Delilah can take over Laudna's body. Delilah really has Laudna in a prison. And I wonder just what machinations Delilah is plotting within Laudna's own head, within her own mind. It's impossible to tell, but now it's this incredible piece of narrative foreshadowing that Laudna has pate, but Laudna is kind of the pate for Delilah. Laudna is the puppet. She's kind of the Dr. Jekyll to Delilah's Mr. Hyde. And after the events of the most recent episode, I think that Delilah is building up power to the point where she will be able to take over Laudna's body completely. At least that will probably be a plot point. I don't believe that she could do it fully yet, else, let's be honest, Delilah Briarwood would absolutely take over the body. But she is definitely building to that point, and knowing that she can do it in these small doses, these small bursts, that's terrifying. I think it completely changes how we see Laudna's character. And really, in the past 2 episodes, I think I've changed the way I see 3 characters, Laudna, Chetney, and Ashton. All 3 have gotten so much backstory and so much development. But is it development for good or development for evil? I think Ashton is tending towards good, Laudna definitely evil, but otherwise, I don't know with this party anymore. We started saying that this party seemed like one of the best parties, one of the happiest parties, true heroes. But over the past 2, 3, 4 episodes, we have definitely seen this corruption seep into Bell's Hells. To be quite honest, I'm not sure if by the end of this campaign we will be considering Bell's Hells heroes, or if the people within Bell's Hells will be heroes at the end. I think that it's completely possible that some of these heroes fall to their own darkness. Chetney, Laudna, Imogen, I mean, the list goes on and on. I even think someone like Fresh Cut Grass has a chance to fall to evil as well, and we didn't really even talk about how much progression he's gotten in these past 2 episodes. Fresh Cut Grass has started to realize that the automatons around him are not being treated very well, and he's not being treated very well. I think he has more than a case to turn towards a revolutionary path. Again, for good or ill, who knows? Whatever the case though, I'm on the edge of my seat to see how the cast and Matt takes these plot threads moving forward. But if you need some more content until the next episode of Critical Role, check out this video right here, and thank you for entering the dungeon.